work as an illustrator or work in advertising field. And
you can see how that could be very unsatisfying compared to what I just said. All the story. Doing advertising compared to...
Well, but after you started working at DC Comics, they asked you to do covers.
Yes.
And more than your interest in storytelling or in illustration, how did what you did in the past affect the way you were creating covers? Because it was quite successful at the moment.
Well, I was successful at doing covers because I would read the story and I would withdraw the idea from the story that exemplified the story. So it was like Norman Rockwell doing covers for the Saturday Evening Post. I remember one of the first covers I did, I had a Superman sitting in a courtroom and he's sitting in a witness chair and a little girl is standing on the floor and the judge is looking over at the little girl and she is pointing to Superman saying, "That man killed my father." Well, that's a pretty dramatic cover.
Sure.
And the idea of the book, yes, it was dramatic. Maybe not quite as dramatic as that particular illustration, but the idea was to take what's in the story and rather than try to impress people with good art, which I tried to have as much as possible, you impress people with the concept of the story.
Because this is the phase people are looking at.
Yeah.
So well, that's the first impact they...
But that's also the same as a book, telling a story in a book, is that you sacrifice... If you're a good enough artist, you're never sacrificing a good piece of art for the sake of telling a story, because you can always find a way to make it artistically interesting. So the important thing is to create for me and for the time. Nowadays, most covers in comic books are iconic in nature, and I have a very difficult time doing covers that are like that. So I try to hide.
You can just use one for another.
So I try to hide the ideas within the idea, so that even the editor doesn't even know what I'm doing. So.
And I read that they simply didn't tell you that covers were really good for them and they were successful. They just called you to do another one.
Yeah, like I was stupid. I know.
Just not to let you know.
Right. Don't let him know that he's making money for us. Yeah.
But
not good.
Essentially, you think that the success of your covers was because you understood, you read what was inside. And
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what the success of my covers was due to, and the significance of it all. And it's something that has to do with the business of comic books and has nothing to do with this interview. But I'll tell it to you. In those days, comic books were distributed through local, national distributors. There were 410 of them, and they were all over the country. And what would happen when I came into the field, and Jim Steranko came into the field, and some other people came into the field, Bernie Wrightson, as this new flood of new artists came in, collectors around the country would drive their vans up to the local distributor, of which, as I said, there were 410. They would drive their vans up to the back of the local distributor, and the local distributor would have the latest comic books on a table. And they would go in and buy them for 3 and 4 cents, 10 cents comic books for 3 and 4 cents from the distributor, and the distributor would count them as being destroyed and not sold. Those people would then take those comic books and take them to a motel or someplace and sell them to fans in the area who couldn't buy them on the newsstand because they weren't distributed, and so they would sell them, and the distributor would mark them as not being sold. So the companies would say, "I don't understand it. Green Lantern, Green Arrow is so popular, but our sales,
no one is
the
buying.
Sales are bad." and yet, somehow when Neal would do a cover, sales would go up 10%. How is that? How is that possible? Well, the way it was possible was these same people who would buy these comic books out of the back of the distributor and sell them for $5 or whatever, those, first of all, those same people became the comic book store owners.
So that's good.
And what would happen was they would buy a Jim Steranko comic book, a Neal Adams comic book, a Barry Smith comic book, a Bernie Wrightson comic book, but if I did the cover, they wouldn't buy it. So that went to normal sales, which went up 10%. So I am, just to give you an idea, pick any comic book that you consider to be iconic of that time, like the Joker holding Batman on the playing card, for example. I signed, at this last convention, New York convention, I must have signed
100.
100 or 200 of them in mint condition. Mint condition.
That's quite strange for 40 years.
That's right. Which were clearly kept in boxes and plastic envelopes on somebody's shelf until the time came that you could take that comic book out of there and sell it for $140, and Neal Adams would sign it at your convention. It's a very strange business. A collector market, what's called the collector market.
Yes, sure.
It began, that whole concept began the comic book store concept. That's where Forbidden Planet comes from. That's where all these comic book. I don't know what you have in Italy. Do you have a very similar thing? Do you have comic book stores?
Yes, but
Or are they just stores?
actually they are probably 100 and 150. 100.
Yeah, that's not bad.
No, considering 55 million of people,
Yeah.
that's
That's
not
good.
bad. But they are just in a bad moment because they have problems that they cannot just have things to sell and then wait and send them back to the.
Yeah.
They have just to be sure they sell 100%. So
Right.
they just ask for pre-order.
Right.
They don't have anything in stock.
Right.
And so if you don't have anything in the store,
How are you going to increase?
people will come there, won't find something different than what they already ask you to put in your bag. And
Bad
so,
business is more popular than good business.
well,
I-
it's like you have 100% of copies sold, but you
But what
have
they're
no way.
doing-
You will always decrease the amount of comic
Right.
book you will
Exactly.
sell.
It's terrible. Anyway, there you,
You
go.
have to sometimes you have to spend money to gain more money, and so just take a couple of more of each one, put on the stands, and have people just finding something different from what they already have.
Or you have to find another way to sell them. I mean, that's if you do that and you buy and you order more, you have to have another place to sell them, like a street fair or a convention or something else, so that if you have extra, you can go to a convention, sell your extra at a convention. In this coming year, we have something like 70 conventions in the United States.
The problem is that we have probably I don't know the same 70 convention, but they are now actually really small ones.
Yeah.
And people maybe have to pay the tickets to get inside, and from their comic book store they have a discount, and so they don't usually go paying a ticket to get inside and pay comic book 100% of their price. So
Yeah, it's tough. Well, they're going to have to figure it out.
and just regarding your latest works, let's say you started to you got back to Marvel and DC, let's say in the last 3-4 years with the
2 or 3 years, more
yeah,
like it.
yeah, with I don't know when you started drawing. I mean,
Yeah.
and let's say with the important jobs. I mean,
Batman Odyssey, X-Men, the first X-Men.
they were let's say top series that or top characters that were.
Mhm.
How how it happened? I mean, did
How
they,
it happened?
No, not because it's not
Why
good.
didn't I start at the bottom instead of at the top?
No, why did they call you asking whatever you want to do, or
No, I was interested. Look, we have been through a recession. Perhaps you noticed. In this recession, my studio, Continuity, has had a great difficulty financially. We went to
Middle 90? No.
yeah, you know,
Well, I have a few
well,
questions
yeah.
on that.
Um, it's mostly in the last, 10, well, since Bush, since
Oh,
that asshole. Oh my God.
I was.
I have to apologize to the world for George Bush.
I just spoke yesterday with I have my uncle here in New York, and he was talking about Obama and whatever may help the
This,
country
right,
to get better.
to get out of this
And
shit.
So we were talking about Obama or Romney or Clinton. He was talking about Clinton. It's just like nobody was mentioning Bush because it was like, I mean,
Because
it's nothing. I mean,
it's like somebody cutting your foot off. It's you don't want to talk about it. I'd rather have a fake foot. It was a horrible guy, and and if you ever think that Americans are smarter than anybody else, you just have to go look at the fact that they elected him a second time.
it was really
Insane,
yeah.
insane, and he was selling the country. I mean, the
Okay.
the worst. Anyway, and it's tough to travel, and you have to, all you're doing is apologizing for Bush. He's such a fucking asshole. Anyway,
We are in the same situation more or less with Berlusconi.
oh yeah. Oh well, Jesus. Well, you're not going to get your comic books sold any better. Anyway, so what happened was, because of this the situation with the economy as it began, advertising agencies started to decide to do. I mean, they didn't want to come to Neal Adams' studio, who was like, it looks like we're successful, and they're making money, and we're not. Our money is going down. So they decided to take all their work inside.
Yes.
And not feed it to freelancers on the outside. Well, we're a studio that depends on that work. So we have a much harder time when that happens. I've had to cut my budget in half, 50% easily, in order to survive. It occurred to me that while this was happening, comic books were doing better. So I had to, as a businessman, I had to balance what I said at the beginning before I kind of dropped out of comic books. I finished Superman versus Muhammad Ali, and then I backed away, even though I published. I said, one time it's going to get better, and I'll come back. Maybe reproduction methods will get better. All the stuff that I've been trying to teach you guys, you'll finally learn, and I'll come back. And what happened was that, yes, things did get better. Things also got worse in advertising. And so I realized, well, how was my career before? My career was, I did comic books, I did advertising, and in between I did comic books. Obviously that's a good formula. And since comic books are getting better, why don't I fill in the slow periods with doing comic books? And probably I'll be paid more than other people now, because
I think without problem.
things
you can.
Things have changed. So, and not only that, I know how to do business. I've actually always known how to do business since I was a teenager. But when I came back, I did better business with the comic book company, so I was paid more. On the other hand, in order to pay me more, they had to give me titles that were worth more. And of course, they know underneath it all, no matter how badly they treated me and whatever their attitude was, Batman Odyssey will stay on the newsstand for years. There's no question that it'll constantly go on and be reprinted and reprinted. So they're going to make a lot of money on it. So they may not have supported it very much, but in fact it'll do well. And this is a retelling of the beginning of the X-Men, which never existed before. So that's a new idea for Marvel Comics. I tend to have good ideas.
Well, it's more easy to work on good ideas.
It is. That's true. That's true. That you put it very well. So I like good ideas, and both of the ideas seem good, and I have ideas for other stuff that they'll probably do with me. They pay me well, and when I'm not doing that, I'm doing advertising. So my studio is doing fine. I'm also going to more conventions because one, I figured out how to make money at conventions, and two, I'm reintroducing myself to a whole new generation of
Yes,
people.
that's why I asked you regarding these two, essentially two series, the Batman and the X-Men, because it's like you had an hiatus on this big selling comic book characters, but for people that that are 40 or 50 or maybe even some 30, you are like one of the, I mean, icon.
Right.
So the fact that you actually really start again to write to draw constantly, I mean that,
Right. Was a surprise and
it,
curiosity.
I mean, now we understand that the reason was not that you didn't like at all anymore to draw, or